So I have the value range sort of figured out in here. Maybe just a little fine tuning still to go here on this. As I worked, one of the things that I became aware of, and I wanted to make sure you understood, was that where you're going to have the higher contrast areas close to you, over here, maybe over there for my particular piece. To get the white in there, don't lay down another gray or something in there first. Put your white in and then work around it, and then add your darks. Darks will go over the light. It's harder to get that white to show back up as a bright white. You may have to erase if you put something in there to be able to get that. Again, you're looking for the higher contrast, darks to light with some grays in there. You could use a little outlining with these, but don't think about it just as outline as much as it's stronger line qualities within it, right? So if you look in the photos I got in there, you'll see this area a little closer, how this has a little more detail. It's a little crisper, a little brighter. This is still sort of near the foreground here. So it has got a little more detail in this front part of the pipe, the water pipe that's going across this bit of water I've set up here. And then it gets much more middle value range, right? It loses its whites within that, and most of it's real blacks within it. So the gray scale comes together in that, right? And the same thing's going to happen in our distant image here. Here's water, some reflection on the water possibly, but again, I'm not planning to get too dark there. I've talked to people about this before, saying sometimes you have to tell a little lie to make it work visually here for you. Because if I make all this the same value range, which may be how the photos will look to you, right? When you're looking at your photos you've taken, you're having to figure out how to interpret this idea of this concept, right? So your photos sometimes aren't going to have that. You can't set, especially if you're using smartphone, you can't set your aperture where everything's going to be crisp and clear and dark, even in the distance. So what I've tried to do is say things that are closer to us. So, I've got another example, and I'm trying to find some more for you. Higher contrast, things that are further away, less contrast. So even though there's some darks in here and some lights, I don't really have a bright white. I don't have a true black like what I have in here, back here. And in each place I've overlapped, I tried to think about that, and maybe putting that area a little lighter than the areas on either side of it as we deal with it. So as you move back in space, one of the things you're going to notice is that there's not detail in that. Even though we know those are supposed to be trees back in there, you have to stylize them somewhat. You start putting in branches and trying to draw just like you did up here, everything gets flat, right? So we're trying to create some depth, perspective, right, on it by saying things that are closer to us, in focus, high contrast, things that are further away from us, less in focus, narrower contrast, right? So that's really the concept. So have a little fun with this as you deal with it, but you have to kind of work back and forth. There is some layering going on. Again, if you have a problem where you put in a dark and you need a white, you're gonna have to use your eraser and go in there and deal with that. The other thing to talk about is saying, work around the negative space. If you just try to draw the object, you're not gonna be able to do this very well. So, especially in this front piece here, I have little leaf structures on this particular plant, or palm structures on it, sticking off of it. So if I said to just draw each one of those, I wouldn't have been very successful. So in places where I knew I was gonna have white, I drew around it with my dark, putting it in the shadows. Places in here as well. I went in and put the shadows in sometimes after I drew the image with my line quality, right? Figuring where that was going to be so I could push back in there, and then kept those other places that I needed lighter by just adding some white on top of white possibly in there, right? Because we're using white paper for this. So the thing I want to make sure you understood, and you'll see the text, how I've written, and you should be working horizontal. I definitely want you to work horizontal, so you're dealing with trying to lay out your space in terms of what we think of a landscape kind of concept, would usually always be horizontal like this. So much easier to focus on the idea that I'm able to have something foreground and then move back into distant space there, so I deal with it, right? Okay, so look at some examples. Start your drawing. If you need some help, don't submit into the grade, for the final grade, with questions. Send me an email. You can send me an image in an email and say, I've worked on this, what should I do? If you submit it into the grades, I might not get to it until after you've, because you submit it, it's final. I'm gonna grade it when I get a chance to get to the grades. If you're working on it still, submit as an email, and then I will work on grading it for you, okay?